My name's Ed Piskor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
Jim, what weekend is it, dude?
December 26th, last show of 2019.
It's been a good run so far, man.
It has been a hell of a year.
It made me think about, I was thinking about comics in relation to Christmas and our channel and all that stuff, and I realized that Christmas is a place where I generated a bunch of comics. Yeah, one thing I want to know is, get any cool shit this year?
I got the Smithsonian newspaper collection. I upgraded from the paperback edition to the hardcover.
Oh, interesting. Like way back in the day, I always knew of that book, and it was your copy I borrowed that I saw for the first time.
Well, I traded in my copy to Bill at Copacetic. Mm-hmm. So anybody that's looking for a paperback that doesn't have this book, you can find one right now there. And it still had the sticker on. I think it's one of the first books I ever bought from Copacetic whenever I first found that store. And it was one that he just, he introduced me to it, and sold it. And anybody that doesn't know that book, it originally was published in 1977, and it's oversized. It's a large book, which is really flattering because it reprints a lot of comics from the early 20th century, like Sunday pages. And whenever I would see those, I never understood what the big deal was. I would see them reprinted small and in bad reproduction. And so this does a much better job of that, and it's a sample. So I've been just starting to go through it again. It's back on my nightstand. When I first bought that book, it was probably next to me for 2 years. It was a huge book, so it's fun to start going through it again. I've been rereading the intro, and it's fascinating. Bill Blackbeard is one of the two guys behind it. Longtime advocate, proponent of comics, collector,
super
saver
collector
of that stuff. And so it's really interesting to go through and see what their criteria was. Because I don't know, it's 300 pages or so. It's a big, meaty book, but still it's just the tip of the iceberg of all the comics that are out there. So there are several series that a whole storyline is reprinted, and then there's a lot of samples where it's a couple of strips from a wider variety. And they talk about kind of the criteria. It's interesting. One of their criteria is what makes these strips noteworthy is their narrative or their graphics. They kind of divide them early on. And that part's just fascinating to consider. For instance, they describe Thimble Theater and E.C. Seeger as narrative.
Sure, yeah, and it has the complete Sea Hag story from what I remember.
Yeah, it's a great
Alice
one.
the Goon.
It's funny though, because in my mind, it's he's such a good cartoonist. They're so lively that there is a graphic component to me. But whenever you're thinking about where these things, where they reside, that's one that he thinks of as being very strong narrative, which makes sense.
When you
it's
have,
known for those storylines.
Yeah, when you have a sample of stuff, and you're looking at Little King or Gasoline Alley, you see probably what they mean by the graphic part of the pyramid.
Yes. So I'm eager to go through that book again because it's been a decade probably since I spent time with it. And then, that's one I'm excited to show. That's such a great book. It came up in our Tom DeHaven interview. It was laying there.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those great collections of comics. And at this point, so much has been reprinted so well. It probably doesn't have the impact it once did. But it was a huge book for me, and it's really cool to kind of get a nicer edition and have it sitting there. And I've enjoyed reading through it so far.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, you are not the only one, man. When you go through those, old Comics Journal interviews, or even with the more articulate creators who have more of a vocabulary in comics, who were interviewed in Wizard, few and far between. That book comes up, and I knew about it for some reason. But once again, it was you who had the copy that I borrowed for the first time, and I got my first major taste of a lot of comics, man. There was a Dennis Kitchen 2-book slipcase that came out that was really good, but it wasn't nearly as tastefully curated as that. Once again, we were talking in one of our Wizard things, man, how I was talking about I think Phantom of the Attic marked out my parents whenever they took my Christmas list into Phantom, and Sin City Big Fat Kill was on that list, and there was a $15 trade paperback that one could get, but when I opened up my stuff, it was the $35 hardcover edition, and I think it might have even been that same year, man, where Ides marked out my mom and dad, because I was specifically looking for Dick Tracy comics. I was a big fan growing up, man, and got a smattering of the Blackthorn issues at like a vintage bookstore in Homestead, and that's what I had in my mind. I imagined opening up like a bunch of Blackthorn comics, and the Dick Tracy sample of like what I got was this like $80 giant slipcase thing that had maybe like 2 pages of Dick Tracy comics, like 2 Sundays were in there, but a smattering of the entire history of American comics, like throughout. Like I saw my first Yellow Kids in that, so I was very grateful, obviously, and it was great to have, but it wasn't exactly what I asked for, man.
Yeah.
And just keeping with the Christmas tip, man, thinking about, you know, we're now in the era of Wizard where I was picking the thing up. In fact, today we're going to be recording issue 42, which was Tom Scioli's first issue. So we're getting into this place where the magazine's becoming more popular, and there are more and more people who are like shouting out like, "This is my first issue."
I do enjoy that part.
Yeah.
It helps with some of these Wizards that are I'm out. I'm done. Like we're hitting the issues where like I was done. I quit at this point. So it's right as Tom Scioli jumps on board, I'm jumping off.
And me. Like it's such an amazing period to me formatively, because my first Palmer's Picks and my first issue that I picked up was Steve Bissett's Tyrant, and I went out and grabbed that. The second one was like Paul Pope's THB, and the spinner rack is cropped off, but the THBs that I scooped are from that. You know what I mean? And I was 12 years old. I was doing these like intramural seasonal art classes, cartooning in the Pittsburgh Center for the Arts, and I was 12, and it was the only opportunity I had to talk comics the entire week whenever I was in this class with the teacher. And I told him like, yeah, I don't really mess with monthly comics anymore, a little boy, you know. and he replied, well, what is there to read, he said. and like I had Tyrant on the pull list. Like my first pull list was like the indie murderers row of like the mid 90s, Bizarre Heroes, THB, Tyrant, Black Hole. Those were like on my young list, man. And it's really fun like getting into these Wizards that we're doing, because there are decisions that I make today that were formulated from mistakes that people went through like back then. But to keep on the Christmas tip, man, there was this it's like an Eastern European, I guess like a Slovak tradition, which is 90% of the people who reside in metropolitan Pittsburgh, you know. And there's a tradition called it's called Vanchovac, and the way it works, it's very sexist for all you Pacific Northwesterners, man. So you might want to tune out for a second. The boys wake up on Christmas Eve with like, you know, you choose a father like in the family, and he takes a train of the family's boys, all the cousins, and you basically wake up wake up everybody in the family, like as far as you can travel, essentially. And we have a big family. Like there was a period of time where I had a cousin in every grade at my school, and that was just the people that were close by, you know what I'm saying? So everybody would sleep up over our house, and there would be like 7 boys, my brother included. My pops would wake us up, like he was an asshole, you know, so like he'd wake us up 5 a.m. and we were always the first ones to like go to our families like across town and bring them good cheer. And they would, you know, they would throw you $1, you know, they would throw you $1, and it's a wonder we all don't have diabetes too, man, because it would be like cookies they would be giving you, you know what I mean? So it's like, here's cookies, here's $1 or whatever. At the end of that, man, I would have between like 30 and $50, and we hit the whole family, you know, 20, 30 homes by 10 o'clock, because we've been at it for 5 hours, you know what I'm saying? Phantom of the Attic is just opening then. So it's like that's
a great memory.
Yeah, I got 30 to $50, and Phantom is open. There's not much else to do, and all the cousins are kicking it. This is the Todd Toys era, you know. So the cousins who didn't fuck with comics, which is most of them, they fucked with toys. So they would get like the new like Spawn toys or something, while I would be down at Ides picking through long boxes for like 2 hours or something like that, or at Phantom, like then the boys would run around Oakland picking shit up, music or whatever, CDs and stuff. Like Ides would have the record shop up top and shit, dude. But that was every year until like, I was a teenager basically, man. So like from like 5 to like 13, man. That and that would be a chunk of like the comics that you see in the house would have been proffered that way. Like I wouldn't have accumulated them that way. Otherwise, I was just starving myself during school lunch throughout the week.
Yeah.
And I would have like $5 whole and, look through the couch cushions for the tax money to pay for those dollar books. You know what I'm saying? And, that was like my childhood accumulation of comics. And like the Christmas thing, as my folks get older, it becomes a more and more important holiday for me to just kind of spend time with them.
Right.
No more arguing and shit. Like, it's like we all are who we are and accept it. So just having those stories, like talking that kind of stuff and talking about the tradition of that, it made me think about like the Kayfabe channel and how certainly the era of Wizard that we're in now, that we're going to be recording, it all fits in, man. So it's this like huge dump of experience,
Yeah, that's a great memory. That's funny you say about the cookies and diabetes. I hosted Christmas dinner this year and had a butterscotch pie for dessert with homemade whipped cream. And it was like my favorite uncle's there, diabetic. It's like, you should skip on this dessert because it's pure sugar. I'm down with all that, Ed. It's I had a really good Christmas this year, but it's totally that shift of like, it's just spending time with people, like everybody being there and in pretty good spirits is sort of what defines it as being that was a good year.
Right. I see what like the jolt that parents must get, because I now have nieces and nephews, and it's really fun Christmas shopping, man. And like for a while I was like, I'm going to use like either the birthday or Christmas to like one of those will be like the literary gift. I'm gonna hook you up with like books and stuff. Like I built a library for my little niece. She's is going to be 6, so she has like a library of books, and I never tracked all the ones I've picked up for her. So it becomes a thing where I have to like raid the library, talk to my brother, show him photos. How about these ones, man? But then you just stop off at Target because you need something, and you breeze through that toy aisle, and it's like, well, she'll get like a literary present and a bunch of toys, man.
Yeah. My nieces and nephews, I'm shocked by, because we do the FaceTime then with them. They're scattered around a bit. My Christmas was not like Christmas today. Like when I was a kid, I thought I did well. When I see what my nieces and nephews are unpacking and showing off, it's just like, man, that's like 5 years worth of toys. It feels like a whole childhood's worth of toys every year. But I guess that's how it is, and hey, they seemed happy with it. So
it's funny because it's the opposite for me when I see even my baby sister, who is 18 years younger than me. She doesn't know sort of like how bad she got it in a way. Like not that she's very thankful, but my folks spoiled the fuck out of me. Like my dad was married before he was married to my mom for like 8 or 9 years.
I didn't know
and
that.
he was a late bloomer. Like he got married like as a teenager, and he was a late bloomer when it came to becoming a father. I'm his firstborn, and he was 35, which was atypical in say 1982. Sure. So when my first conscious memories, I had the LJN rubber wrestlers, and I had stack of comic books. Like he was just like anticipating like, what would I get my son, or type, you know what I mean? Like this boy, like I probably didn't even have teeth, and I had like those rubber wrestlers and shit because he was probably like going down the aisle doing what I did with my little niece.
Right, yes.
When I see, Operation, the game Operation, but a Play-Doh version where you make the intestines and the hearts and shit. Like I'm like, oh, that's fucking cool. I'm sure he did that with me. So I had all this junk from my first conscious memories. Atari, but like that was my mom. Like she was fucking with that, and I was a spoiled fuck. I was super, super spoiled. Like I was your nieces and nephews. Entire living room
Yeah.
with at the height of G.I. Joe and Transformers and Thundercats. Like my folks, whenever a new toy line would come out, they would prevent us from grabbing, like, you can't get any Mask figures because we can't get you another whole set of toys. You know what I mean?
Would you describe your dad as a completist? Was that the part of the issue? See, my parents didn't have that at all. So it'd be like, here's one of something.
Right. They like I don't know, like and like I've had these conversations with people, and that was sort of the way things would go with like a lot of people, especially with like boy siblings and shit. Like it would be like my bro would be the one to accumulate the turtles while I was grabbing, G.I. Joe Real American Heroes or something.
Yeah, it makes sense for siblings. You need to, that makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
But that is funny to me because I do think there's personality types involved behind these shopping decisions.
I think so too, because
you building a library for your niece is an example. Every uncle's not doing that.
Right.
There's some personal bias involved in that choice.
It's funny you mention that because it's something I never thought about. But now, as I recall these memories, man, the last Masters of the Universe figure that I needed to get my hands on to have a complete run, minus the girl figures, because I didn't give a fuck about Tila and all that. Was Ram Man. That was a popular toy, I guess, and like I was very young when the first round of that came out, and it went away when I was like more aware and shit. So when we went to like Woodlawn Flea Market, and my pops, like, we got a Ram Man, and my pops seemed happier than I was. Like I was definitely stoked, but he's like, we got a Ram Man. So I think you're onto something there, Jimmy, is what I'm saying, man.
That's good. That's funny. I think I had a Ram Man. That was the He-Man that like you would push him down and there was a spring release or something that would make him shoot up.
Yeah, the green spring legs.
It's funny how crappy those toys are.
Especially that one.
That thing didn't move. I don't think it moved at all except the legs, and they were like fused together.
Yeah.
That was a ridiculous toy.
Yeah, not a good one. But you could still, to this day, I actually just watched a documentary about Masters of the Universe. It was something I saw before, but I watched it again because I didn't realize I saw it before. And they were talking about, and this would happen with the G.I. Joe figures as well, whenever there would be like a new kind of gimmick technology that would come out. For instance, you could get a little pine tree air freshener that had a scent. They would make a toy. Now you have Moss Man.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yes.
And
new technology. Let's apply it everywhere.
Right. There was
4-quadrant technology.
I wonder what the old people would use with that. Well, actually, I could think about that, man. I went to Grandma's house one day, had to go in her closet, man, smelled some pine kind of scent or something. The guy who sculpted many of the G.I. Joe Real American Hero action figures, there's a great series of interviews with him on YouTube. But he also sculpted, is it MasterCard that has like the dove? Or is it Visa that has the dove? One of those has the little bird. And it's like a hologram. That was a new technology in the 80s. And the way that technology worked, it might be different now, probably is, but at the time, it had to be a 1-for-1 ratio of the printed matter with the photograph, like with what they were scanning in or whatever. So he had to sculpt that, like the guy who sculpted those action figures sculpted the little bird that is in the hologram. That had to be like the size of a flake of soap. So there was the character called the Bat, the B-A-T, the Battle Android Trooper from Cobra, and he had a chest that had that same hologram.
Right, yes.
And so he sculpted the figure anyhow, and he did this freelance work for MasterCard or Visa or whatever, and like told Hasbro about like this like cool thing. And like, so like the Bat is like his full creation because they just wanted to utilize that piece of technology.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I recommend the Masters of the Universe documentary, man. It's one of those things where you see that we were like fucking fully gamed because they get a bunch of kids in a room, let them play with these figures, and these figures are kit bashed from other figures. Like the Battle Cat was a proper like orange tiger for these 12-inch figures.
Story of those He-Men.
Yeah, and
Battle Cat.
Yeah, I still have my Battle Cat. That's like the only He-Man toy I still have for no particular reason.
It's a good choice. It's funny that it was just accident. Like, this is what we have, so
Yeah, spray painted
make
green.
it work.
Yeah. And they get into how all the Castle Grayskulls all look different because the guy who kind of like made the decision, whenever you make toys, like each of these pieces of color, it's almost like print where it's an added cost. So each color is like an added cost. But he was like, listen, I used to fucking paint roofs, or I used to paint houses or something. Like, you get the Waldo or whatever, and you just fucking spray upward. So whenever you were a kid and you would go to your cousin's crib or something, and their Castle Grayskull looked a little different, like, that was why, man, because they would just like have these poor bastards wherever the fuck they were, breathing in whatever the fuck they were for 8, probably 15 hours a day, spraying our Castle Grayskulls, man.
They used to make the black velvet paintings, same deal. They were like assembly line.
Really?
So like you'd have like, 1,000 Elvis paintings roll down the line, and it was like, I put on the white jumpsuit collar, and that's what you would do all day. So you would see those, like you'd see those black velvet paintings if you start looking, and it's like there's a bunch that are kind of similar because that's how they were made. Like, those are not works of art. They were assembly line produced and then like sold wherever, honeymoon spots or whatever,
There's the one LJN big rubber wrestler figure of Kamala, and he's got the tattoos on the chest, man. And that to me is a heartbreaking figure because you could see the overspray, and I just imagine like a poor kid somewhere in far Asia or something is like spraying these things and probably would like to have a copy, like to have a figure, man, and just like putting in the box.
Maybe you're just confused looking at that thing. Like, what is this?
Yeah, no two Kamalas look the same, man.
It's perfect theme though for a Christmas episode.
Right.
Nothing says Christmas like child labor.
Right. Dan Frega's doing a Masters of the Universe comic now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think DC has the rights or something, and the art looks on point. You know what I mean? Like he's got a YouTube channel going on, man. We'll have to bring him on. I was thinking years ago, I was going through some notes, and I approached Rob Liefeld about doing an art book, and my argument to him to do it was a length and girth issue because the McFarlane one just came out, and I was like, Rob, I think we could do one maybe 50 pages thicker and make that format even bigger, man. And he was like, that's a bet. But I wanted to pull in like oral history Extreme Studios bit, and then it went away. But that doesn't mean that I can't do my oral history of Extreme Studios thing just through the channel even. So it's like if I got access to like Frega, he texted us once when we were recording like last week, because we were doing like a couple weeks ago when we were doing mail, and like the black flag it was like when you turn a page and the black flag symbol appeared, that's like the bat signal. Like Frega appeared in our chat and stuff, and texted us and shit. But like I was thinking, man, if I get these dudes on the horn and we stream some interviews with these dudes, like we can lean an interview far in that direction and have those conversations about like putting together Extreme Studios and like that whole era. Like I think that would be a fun document to cobble together.
Amazing. Yeah, as we've started doing a little bit of these interviews, like that crosses my mind too. And the big fish in my mind is Steve Bissett. Like I was just brainstorming like what you would talk to him about. And it's the same deal. Like any of these guys, they have their sort of corner or their niche in history, like the Extreme Studio guys. But Bissett's runs like, I don't know, man, 40 years worth of coverage from like Kubert School, Class 1, self-publishing, 80s Alan Moore, Swamp Thing, 90s Image,
and self-publishing.
CCS for 20 years. Like everybody that's come through CCS, I think he was there from the beginning or damn near the beginning. Black and White Explosion, 90s distributor collapse, it just never ends. So yeah, I agree with you totally. I think these interviews could be amazing, and I think they could be built around, various themes and pieces and stuff. If we were doing Extreme Studios, maybe it's all Image, like maybe it's a whole Image playlist of whoever's intersected there, especially in the formative years of that. It's pretty interesting to kind of see these different perspectives, and there are definitely, I think there is a lack of record of a lot of this stuff, and especially in video format.
Yeah.
Like when we were watching Comic Confidential, that was a thing that stood out to me, is like seeing any of these guys on video and alive. There's just something great about that. So I'm looking forward to that, in 2020. I think we'll be doing more of that. So
definitely.
Yeah, Dan Fraga, Get the white powder. Get ready for your camera time.
When we were doing one of the earliest show and tells, man, I chose Sojourn as like a show and tell item, and I had some of the stuff some of the knowledge that existed about Sojourn, I was able to glean from various places, but such a small amount, and I had a lot of questions. And I think even in the show and tell, I said, like, Jimmy, sometimes I forget that I'm in comics, and I could just ask the guy. When I had my conversation with him on the phone, Steve Bissett, Sojourner was the theme. 3-hour conversation that involved everything around Sojourn. You know what I mean? So that might be the thing. Like we can use the opportunity if somebody has like a new book to peddle or something, then it creates a situation because we sell books. It's on record, man. Like any publisher, like people have hit us up like, what the fuck happened that we just sold this dead stock?
Right.
So it's like we sell books, and this is going to be the one-stop shop to pimp that stuff. But we have our agenda, and it's to get some cool shit on the record, man, and to ask the questions that we've never seen asked in interviews or on the record, essentially.
Well, continuing the idea of 2020 and New Year's resolutions, another idea that I had, and I get millions of these. Like I could fill notebooks with these ideas for shows. I need more than 168 hours a week to really do what I want with this channel. But one of the ideas I had was to do like a month that would be like a season, and it would be 1986. Mm-hmm. I've made, I've talked a lot about 1986 being a super important year to me in comics history, and I think in comics history in general.
It's an important year.
Yeah, it's the year the direct market takes over, surpasses newsstand and sales, but it's Watchmen and Dark Knight and Year One and Electra Assassin and all these different factors that make it sort of Black and White Explosion is probably at its apex at that time. And I thought like anything that's connected to 1986, we could just cover for a series of weeks. And it would be like a season from Amazing Heroes issues. We've talked about wanting to do some of those, but also to book clubs. Like we did the Dark Knight, recently went up, and it was probably the thing that started making me think about this is like, oh man, we could just like, it'd be like we're living in 1986 for a month where everything we're reading is kind of connected to that and the stuff we're talking about. So yeah, I think, I've been thinking a lot about that as we get to the end of this year and just thinking ahead of like, what do we want to do next year?
Yeah.
And there's no shortage, like the ideas, man, everything we do, there's probably 20 ideas that come around it. One of the things that we're starting is an e-newsletter.
Right.
So we will have a link for that below this video. I encourage everybody to sign up for that. And part of the reason for the e-newsletter is to try to keep everything easy for everybody to see. All these social media channels, it's very easy to miss stuff. Algorithms mean even if you follow us, you're not getting everything that we post. The e-newsletter, and it will evolve, I'm sure, once we start doing it and getting it out there, but I'm kind of envisioning it as a very easy place, either weekly or bi-weekly, something of that sort, where you can see everything we've posted, whatever news is coming up, what we're reading, what we feel like writing about, upcoming appearances, special offers. It'll be the easiest place, at least in my mind, for you to keep up with what we're doing. So that's an easy sign up. It's free, and the link is below this video, and it'll probably start in January. So yeah, man, like 2020, there's a lot I want to do, Ed. There's the comic stuff continues to grow in my brain. It's like the more I look, the more I find, and it's just, I don't know, it's surprising to me what this last year has been in terms of this channel and just the people we've talked to, the books we've read. It's I
don't want the momentum to stop. The momentum ain't stopping, man. We're going to keep this thing growing. We're rocking our Akira jackets, man, and we're going to give this one away. Like, we've been teasing it for a long time, and early on as we were growing the channel, we put it out there like, what can you do? Don't ask what Cartoonist Kayfabe can do for you. Ask what you can do for Cartoonist Kayfabe.
That's
man.
A good point. Yes.
and a lot of people, they've shown and proven. My big disappointment, nobody got the Kayfabe logo tattooed on their forehead. Maybe in 2020 that'll happen. We'll see.
I hate that you're asking for this.
we just
it
gotta
hit nervous before, and it still does.
We just gotta hit a certain critical mass.
The guy that comes up in line with the tattoo of Kayfabe on their forehead, I'm running away.
He's gonna be your biggest fan. He's gonna tell you his whole life story, Jimmy.
Yes.
So I think it's unanimous. Everybody who has been following the coat saga, the jacket saga, one name is always the one that's mentioned, man. And it's Punker Mike. he did so much crap, man. I have a few exhibits. These were just like the fun little ones. This came in the mail. Show that off to the people.
This is one of my favorite pieces that I have. It's he made us a couple of these, so we both have one. Didn't have to break up the channel, have the tag team come apart. But it's a VHS edition of a Cartoonist Kayfabe
episode 1,
packaged beautifully. You know, like this brings back so many memories to me of VHS video store rental time period. And
down to the "Be Kind, Please Rewind." Like, I forgot about that.
Perfect.
Totally forgot about that part.
I get happy every time I see it on my shelf.
And then this was like a very cool thing, man. The X-Men Grand Design Nintendo tapes. They sent a gang of them shits. Did 2 commercials for the Kayfabe channel, the Pittsburgh Powerhouse, man.
Very awesome videos.
Where it's like the Eddie P. Jim Rugg fucking tag team action figures. And the dude is legit, because even the title, Pittsburgh Powerhouse, took lettering from the titles of many of our fucking comics.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, this jacket is going to him, man. Like no question. And I bring that up in relation to the newsletter because I'm sitting on lots of inventory, and I'm gonna do regular giveaways.
I'm with you on that.
Through the newsletter, man. So sign the fuck up, so we can send you some fly shit. In fact, I'm gonna take this mic off real quick, dude, because I have something for you, man. Because I got some mail this past week, man. So I should have been prepared. Filibuster for a second.
All right. Giveaways are gonna be a great piece. I like Ed. I have piles and piles of comics, many my own, but I even have boxes of doubles at this point, and never know what to do with them. So I've sent some out already, and that's something that a newsletter. Oh man, I don't have anything this good to give away. Let me say that. This is amazing, Ed. Wow.
Yeah, man, that's yours, dude. I want to thank you for this is the Ed Piscor Studio Edition. I want to thank you for helping me curate
this
the
is
material,
a
dude.
Beautiful thing. I'm so excited to sit down with this, Ed. I know that we've gone through it in pieces and proof stages and stuff, and it's just stunning. It's. I really think it's one of the best artist editions I've seen, and I have too many of those.
Right.
So I'm excited for this. I'm excited for the public at large to see it. The artist edition has become such a great artifact, and like I said, you do some stuff in this one that I haven't seen in any of the other artist editions that I think is going to become the norm. So all the ones before this, we're going to look at differently. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
For sure. And it was a pallet that was delivered.
I bet.
It was
one of them is unwieldy.
A box of 2 is I think 18 kilograms. So what is that? 32 pounds?
Yeah.
The cardboard boxes that they come in, heavy stuff. So it was 13 of those, and it was a lady who brought them, and she knocked first, and I was like, no stairs for you. I'll grab these fucking things. So I'm sitting on a bunch of them, and every now and then, when I get the whimsy, I'll send one off to one of the people on our mailing list, man. Like if I have access to those emails and could see the people who are in the thing, I'm just gonna at randomly choose one, hit the person up, let me send you one of these studio editions. You know what I'm saying, man? But I have a bunch of stuff. I have Public Enemy toys. I have runs of Hip Hop Family Tree comics. I know you got Street Angels, stuff like that. So it's like, get on the fucking mailing list, man.
It's funny. I've been subscribing to various mailing lists. You know, we've been talking about this for several months, and so I've been subscribing and seeing like what I like and what works and things like that to try to figure out like how are we going to make this good. And one of my favorite mailings lists has been a Saturday morning delivery. So I would get up in the morning, you know, and it's stuff I follow already. I would get up on a Saturday morning, cup of coffee, checking emails or whatever, and it would be like the list of everything this person has done, you know, for the past week. And it was great. It's the perfect time. So like that's something that I have in mind. And
as a delivery mechanism.
Yeah, you know, like trying to make this a thing where it's like as user friendly as possible. You know, like just an extension of what we do with the show.
Yeah.
And
here's a question.
I'm looking forward to it.
Would it be something like, would I make it live before I go to bed on a Friday night at like 4 a.m.? Or would it be something that you would wake up? Like, we'll have that conversation.
Yeah, we'll have that conversation. And again, I expect it to evolve. Like all of this stuff, once you start doing it and getting feedback and seeing it, it's always different in real life than it is in my head. Mm-hmm. So it'll change and grow like the channel has.
Yeah, sweet, man. So speaking about like what this guy did the past week, what have you been up to, man? All holiday stuff all the time?
Almost all holiday. I put a new floor in. My wife was out of town, so part of my Christmas plans was surprising her with this new kitchen floor. That was a couple days of work, and I hosted Christmas dinner, so that was a couple days of work.
Did you have the chance to see the Eddie Murphy Saturday Night Live?
I did watch it, yeah.
So there's that one skit where it's Eddie Murphy who's hosting the dinner, and he's standing up there, a big spread, all the family's there, and it's like this total like phony moment where everybody's kind of saying like the things that they're supposed to say, and then jump cut to the reality of the situation. So what I'm saying is I'm imagining you sweating over like a hot stove bed with like, I know you don't smoke, but like I am imagining, because it's my imagination, I can do what I want. The cigarette hanging out of the mouth, with the long ash, and just like running back and forth with oven mitts and stuff.
Yeah, it went pretty smooth, but there's always a couple moments like that.
There's a thing, like, knowing you and that kitchen floor thing as well, like, you don't turn off the kind of perfectionism. Like, I know you. So I just know that you were agonizing about a lot of things, man.
It worked out well.
Yeah.
But yes, there was halfway through, like, it was a 2-day process. When I went to bed at the end of day 1, it was like, man, why did I do this?
Oh, I'm sure, man. When I was a boy, before going to the Kubert school, I in order to make money to like my expense money that I would buy groceries with when I was up there, I freaking hung drywall with my Uncle Bill, and he's a cool cat, but he, you know, like, put it this way, I gained major respect for the man, going to work with him day in, day out, hanging drywall and fucking building rooms, because my out of shape, skinny, cartoonist ass wasn't ready for that, man. And I slept like a baby every day.
It's real work. There's obviously craft involved. It's figuring stuff out. I can see it's enjoyable in the sense that you can see that what you're doing, you know, like it works, and you can see that. So I appreciate that part, but man, I was sore. I was sore, and especially my hands. Like, I did think about that as I was like a couple days afterwards, and it's like, man, that is real work.
We're gonna be
been a while.
We're gonna be like launching into a new freaking decade, basically, man. Like 2020 is coming around the corner, and it's making me think about where was I going with that?
I have an Eddie Murphy thing.
Go do it.
Have you watched Dolomite Is My Name?
Jim, I haven't.
I finished it this week.
Yeah.
I need you to watch it, Ed, because I have questions about Rudy Ray Moore.
Okay, cool.
And my favorite part of it is, you know, like it's detailing him making up to making the movies. You know, it's kind of a biopic. But the movie stuff I really enjoyed because it reminded me of comics in a lot of ways. You know, like that sense of like they're doing this thing that they don't totally know how to do, but it's that juice of like we're gonna find a way, and
right.
everybody does it. And it's a great moment, and it's like when I was doing Aphrodisiac, I was looking at a lot of the blaxploitation movies, and they had that energy, where it was like enthusiasm would make up for the craft or the inexperience, and you could feel it.
Right.
And I always thought like that's one of those places. Like I always believe if you love the comic you're making, or if you hate the comic you're making, it comes through.
Yes.
Some of that is readable, and sometimes it's very clear.
Right.
And that's probably where I first started thinking that and kind of feeling that way, is like seeing that enthusiasm on the screen, and it comes through in the movie. And so like I really appreciated that part. But I don't know anything about Rudy Ray Moore besides like I heard his comedy albums, I watched those movies, you know, and I just thought he must be that character. So watch that movie, and then I'm curious we can talk a little bit about the reality behind it.
Will do. And I remember where I was going with that thing about the past decade and all that, man. What you were saying about putting the floor in and seeing the work done, I was realizing that looking at my past decade's worth of output, that's like all of my solo comics to date. Because it's like WYSIWYG Forward, that was 2012, and it's been a big decade, you know, big change, like a life-changing thing, like for the positive. But a part of it too, like looking at the accumulation of work, it is interesting to think about, like, I'm sort of tracking time with that. Like, it's like maybe just a small piece of the creative process when it comes to the comics and putting the pages together. This is something that comes up in conversation a lot with cartoonists, is you almost feel like you're not doing the work if there's not like a tangible result, meaning a new page is done or something. And I think that is what we're tapping into, is this idea of like tracking progress, what's like something physical. It's letting the world know that you existed for these 3 days, like, and here's what you have to prove it. Most everybody else otherwise has, nothing to prove it. Maybe they remember like a movie they saw or something, but it's all ephemeral or headspace stuff.
Right.
But we like have this benefit of like being able to like chart progress and track time, like with the actual like physical artwork, the stuff that we create. And it's kind of trippy thinking about that, where it's like right up there on my desk, man, is my past decade,
Yeah. That's a hell of a decade.
Good decade, man. You will hear no complaints, man.
Now it makes me want to organize my work that way and think about it and like, what did I do this decade?
What's going to be the real trip is when we have decades to talk about, man, because I'm not 20 years in yet.
I think in these years, but thinking in terms of a decade, like sometimes 8 years ago, certain things it's like that's a million years, and other things it's like I'm shocked to think WYSIWYG is only 8 years ago.
Right. Yeah, I know what you mean, man.
It feels like a lifetime.
You know what? This is a callback to an earlier Kayfabe Weekly when you gave me the Meru pen nib, the manga nib,
yes,
to use, and I put it to work.
Oh, cool.
It is. Here's what I have to report. It is actually. It may look like a 102. It's closer to a 107. Much stiffer. It requires like. I bet you could get a nice thick line, but it creates a thinner line, and in order to get the thickest, like the maximum thickness line that you can with it, takes too much wrist work. Like you'd be pushing down far too much. So I would definitely consider it closer to the 107 than the 102.
Interesting.
If you were like looking at it that way, which I think was the conversation.
Yeah,
is this
yeah,
like the
for
102? Sure. The steel is way stiffer. So I put it to work on on the Red Room video, like the last like part where with the gas mask, like that whole page was Meru nib, thinner line for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Are you still using it, or does it get a page and onto the next nib?
It got a page, and I think I have it sitting over here. Like I don't think it's going to come into my practice, so I could hand it off to you if you still want to rock it.
I don't need it back, but I was just wondering, like when you say like it's a stiffer steel or whatever, like we talk about like the 102s being a page and a half, something like that, and then it's like, oh, I wonder if that means it's like 3 pages or something.
Yeah, I bet it could last quite a while for sure. Yeah, and if I was like maybe less lazy or something, maybe I would have. Oh, one of the stories that Steve Bissett told me was when they were students at the Kubert School and they would get to hang out in Joe's studio while he was like slinging ink and putting shit together. And this image, like, this just conjures such a perfect image in my mind when he's describing Joe's process. It's like the radio's playing, it's like a soft jazz kind of thing. You're instructed not to talk. You can hang out, go through all the archives and all that. Just don't fucking talk to me. I have work to do. And Steve said that like when he would look over at Joe, like in the webbing of every finger, different implement, brush and different pens, pencils, and he would just and like knew like each one went into a special, like the exact same place every time, and he would just probably one thing in the mouth, a thing behind the ear, and just like had his whole
It's
thing.
an amazing image.
Right, yeah. And that's how we were instructed and taught. It's like, the lines that are facing away from the light source, like hit that with the brush. These are remnants of Dick Giordano's teachings and stuff. Hit it with the brush, stuff that's closer to the light, hit that with the pen, inner details, maybe a different pen. Maybe like that's where the Meru would come into effect, is like those like McFarlane details,
Do you employ any of that?
Not so much, man.
I don't either.
I
tend to just go, I go with stuff that I think is important, and also whatever tool I'm using. Like I'll go through cycles of like, okay, I'm brush inking a bunch of stuff, and then I'm nib inking a bunch of stuff, and then I'm micron inking a bunch of stuff or whatever. So I don't have like the multiple tools at hand switching between them. It's always like cycle of one, and then go through the next one and go through the next one.
I guess I do bounce around a little bit, but I don't use the brush because I've had such fucking bad luck since art school. Like the brush that I got when I went there in my little care package was the perfect brush, and it only lasted so long, and I cannot find one as good, and buying these things online is ridiculous because instantly get disappointed because it's not split hair, or it just isn't the quality that I need. And I've been so disheartened. All the old cartoonists say the same thing too, that like it just isn't the same brush. Like maybe the horses changed or something.
I've never had luck with Winsor Newtons. You know, like that was always the standard, you know, in all the books that I would read growing up. And it's like, I don't know if I ever had a Winsor Newton that wasn't split. I think the quality in those is definitely, it can't be, they couldn't have been the way they are today.
Right.
Because I've never gotten a good one. I've probably bought 10 of them in my life, and I don't think I've ever had one that I used for any period of time.
And these are $30 brushes, $40 brushes. And no matter what kind of loot I ever get my hands on, I'm still the same. It hurts. You know what I mean? To like spend 40 bones and have a bad brush.
Especially if it doesn't work.
Exactly. Yeah. Something.
It hurts a little bit if it works. It's terrible if it doesn't.
Yeah, like I could justify anything if it works, man, because one page will pay for that.
Yeah.
So that makes economic sense to me, man. But fucking investing that loot and having something disappoint me, I got burnt too many times. Where it's like, I guess I'm a pen inker, man, because these brushes are not doing it.
It's funny how people find tools, because I bought all the stuff whenever I first read probably How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, you know, and it had the list of materials, but I didn't buy any good ones. You know, I bought like a nylon brush,
right?
You know, $1.99 brush or something, maybe $1. I bought pen nibs, but they weren't Hunt 102s. They were whatever I found.
Yeah.
And they were like these big clumsy things. And then the worst part is I'm using them on like a sketch pad with just fiber everywhere and garbage paper, you know, bleeding and spider webs of the ink. The pen nibs would get all clogged up and just not work. And it was like, for 10 years, I was like, I just can't use a pen. I don't know how to use a pen. I can't use a pen. And, you know, consequently, I learned to ink with a brush really well, especially with the crappy brush.
Yes.
But it was all, you know, it was just, I didn't know what I was doing. If I had 30 seconds with Joe Kubert, he could have straightened me out instantly and been like, you need this other paper, or if you're going to use pen nibs, or, you know, like it would have been so easy, but I had nothing. So it was like, well, I can kind of use a brush.
Whenever I went to the Kubert school, when I was using a shitty bullshit brush myself, and it was from my mom's watercolor set, and it was such fine hair that, and I sort of made it work. But when I got like the good, and it was a Winsor Newton, when I got the good Winsor Newton, it was like using a Sharpie or something. I could just sling that fucker all over the place, dude, and it was easy. And then a lot made sense. It's like, I get Charles Burns now.
Yeah.
Like, he ain't using that brush that I have, man. No. Like, I see how he can get these lines.
The first time I got hold of a sable hair brush, I can remember being so excited by it and like running out and telling my wife, like, I can feel like the tooth of the paper through the brush. And she's just like, what are you talking about? But you could feel, it was a world of difference. It was a totally different tool. Like, I had been using brushes, but man, nothing like that. It was magic. It was like a different tool. Just having that, I guess the sable hair would have been the thing that made it different. But like you said, so versatile, you know, like Charles Burns, that ability to be huge black areas to just the finest line imaginable, and it's all lines. in one freaking tool.
A lot of learning early on, man.
Yes.
For even my first stuff with Harvey Pekar, the stuff that's in Our Movie Year, I was 21 years old and living at home with Mom, and they just let me like be in the garage, you know, like I was able to put my drawing shit in the garage. I had a new baby sister that I previously mentioned, and it was like,
yeah, I think you could have done anything. I think they were preoccupied.
Well, it was like, Ed, your drawing table can't be in a house anymore. You know what I mean? Like, you got to find somewhere else to go. And I just moved a bunch of shit in the garage and they like sat there. Now, Pittsburgh, sweltering summers, super cold winters, man. And I drew the Our Movie Year stuff.
That doesn't affect the ink at all, does it?
Oh, my boy. Like, I didn't even understand what was happening for maybe a year or something, where I spent my birthday drawing the big strip for Harv, like a 28 pager or something, in like, you know, 24 days or some crap like that. And he wanted to see the pencils first. So I would pencil 12 pages, FedEx them, and then start penciling, you know, page 13 until he gets that, and then hits me up and says, yeah, go ahead and ink the thing. Like, thank you for not drawing a mask on my face or something like that. So then it's ink time, and spent all this time like laboring on those pencils and shit, and I'm in the garage and it's fucking July, and put that pen down, man, and just watch the ink go like this and wonder, like, why the fuck did that happen? What did I just do here, man? This didn't happen, a couple months ago. What the fuck? Like, is this why some people wear a glove when they pencil? Like, I'm a sweaty bitch. Nobody tells me that my hands are clammy when I shake their hands. It doesn't feel particularly wet. What the fuck, And then it was actually a year or two later where it's like I have a good studio set up, and I have the air conditioner like rocking when it's plus 100 and super fucking humid. And guess what? That doesn't happen to my paper. And then you realize, like, fucking moisture from the air gets into the paper and makes it shitty.
It's so temperamental. It's so temperamental. Like, people who work all digital now or whatever, probably, like, we are dinosaurs having this conversation.
Yeah.
But anybody who's worked with ink and paper and nibs and brushes, like, all of it is affected. It's affected by the climate. It's affected by the tools. I used to have ink
is perishable.
Yeah, oh yeah, and the ink, right? The ink that works really great today is different ink in 2 weeks.
Yeah, there was a thing that we would do, like, and I still probably have the same tin of Bestine that I got from school, because that was the thing. It was like, if this ink isn't doing what you want it to, in fact, maybe every time you open it, like one guy, like every time he would open it, he suggested put a few drops of Bestine. I don't even know what that is.
I don't either. I've never even heard of Bestine.
Yeah.
I would always read, like, guys would leave their ink open, uncapped for like 2 days.
That would be that Higgins bullshit.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But this is the kind of stuff I would read in interviews.
Yeah.
And it'd be like, I'd be soaking that up, man. Tom Palmer, how do you ink? Any of those guys would have some, but a lot of them would do that, would leave the caps off, let it thicken up to the consistency they wanted. There would always be the information, like, I don't know about the Bestine, but like distilled water, add a drop or two of that.
I'll just add some of this, like whenever I'm not getting the flow, like I'll just put like a half a cap, well, a few drops essentially, like just like salt in your meal, man. You could always add more, can't subtract it, man. So just
you can leave the cap off for a couple days,
right. Yeah, you don't want it to start turning to ink wash gray.
It also stinks after like old ink stinks, because it's organic.
Yeah,
and it smells bad, so you get that, and it's like, all right, I'm done with that batch. Got to make a new batch of ink.
I can make a real bad joke, but I won't, because this is a tasteful program, man.
It is the holiday episode.
Got anything else to hit, man, before we get out of here? We got 2 Wizard episodes to record, because we're going to resume that again. This Sunday, we raced to, like, just get some more stuff on the books, man. I started up the Read More Comics thing up again, man. So I got Ben Mara, Tom Scioli, and Jim Mahfood in the house, man, and we're picking up where we left off, talking Miracle Man issue number 4. So it's like we do got something new in between our Wizard coverage, because I was thinking, like, listen, man, every fucking TV network can do some reruns and stuff. Maybe we do like one really like great like piece from this past year. We don't need to do that, man. Put something fresh out there. But we do have 2 Wizards to record today.
Yes, we do. And getting into your era of Wizards.
Yeah.
So should be fun. It's a little bit different. And these Wizards are new for me. So it has been kind of interesting reading them, and, not to spoil anything with them. But what I have found interesting, it's like 1994, end of 1994 is where we're at. And in my mind, comics fall apart in like 97, 98. It's already bad.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like a roller coaster in my mind, because like everybody's talking about it, like people are suspending operations, things are bad in this stage. And in my mind, I'm like, you guys have no idea what's happening. Like, you're about to go off a cliff in like 2 years. So it's interesting, because I had checked out. So, like historically, I'm conscious of what's going on. I think we have Alex Ross coming up, sort of his rise to superstardom. I'm aware of those things, but I wasn't that close to them. So going back through that it's kind of interesting. It's a chance to revisit this stuff that I didn't look that closely at the first time through.
Yeah, I mean, a big part, like what the real story is with the Wizard episodes, we're telling a tale. And the tale is of the great heights of the speculator boom and the tremendous decline come mid-90s, when all the culture vultures left our beautiful medium a fucking husk, and leaving opportunity, we'll say, for it to be built up again, man.
Yeah, I do like this big narrative, and I think there's even bigger pieces. I think it's things of the direct market evolving and changing a lot as bookstores come up, and some of that coincides with things like creators having more autonomy in terms of publishing and opportunities outside of just work for hire. So a lot of good stories are going on there, and those definitely continue on through these wizards. So it's fun, man. The 90s were my comics, that was my birth. So revisiting that and kind of seeing it through a historical lens has been enjoyable.
I have my issue of the Extreme Sacrifice Prelude pulled right there to talk some very specific details.
Yes, you do. That is true. That's not theater of the mind, improv stuff. I can vouch for it.
Yeah. I have some things to say about that, man. We should get the heck out of here, but let's give a couple marching orders up front. Get on that e-newsletter mailing list. The link is directly in the description below. Should we get out of here?
That's all I have.
All right, man. On top of the newsletter, man, like, subscribe, and follow the Cartoonist Kayfabe YouTube channel. Hit that bell icon. We'll notify you when the next vids are live.
You can find Cartoonist Kayfabe merch and t-shirts at the link below the video as well.
Jim, let's go record these wizards, man.
The rest of you, read more comics.